I've never been humanity's sole hope in the face of imminent destruction, nor have I ever been involved in a melodramatic romance. And whilst I do know the power of friendship, I can't say with any confidence that I've been able to effectively use it to defeat my arch nemesis. Whilst I may not have experienced these events myself, I can certainly enjoy media based around them, and the same is true for sports series. Whilst my own personal sport exploits may not have gone beyond the lofty heights of a 50-metre swimming badge, I can wholeheartedly say that I adore the overly dramatic, testosterone-fueled neon light show extravaganza that is the sports anime genre. So, it is with great delight that my next review should focus around one of the less appreciated examples of the genre in recent years, Ace of the Diamond. Ace of the Diamond is a 75-episode sports series produced by Studio Madhouse and Production IG between the years of 2013 and 2015. It was directed by Mitsuyuki Masahara and was written by Kenji Konata. Ace of the Diamond kicks off in a rather archetypal fashion, with a bristling bull of potential by the name of Asian Sawamura being spotted by the talent scout for Seido High School, a once hugely successful baseball school which hasn't quite been able to recapture its fabled strength in recent years. Sawamura's talent is instantly recognised on account of his unique form of pitching, and after an episode or two of umming and ahhing over whether to choose between his small town team of friends or his future in baseball, he's carted off to the prestigious establishment. From here on in, we follow Seido as they endeavour to reach nationals, whilst also seeing Sawamura's skills as a pitcher grow and develop as he battles for the vital position of the team's ace. Or main pitcher for those unfamiliar with baseball terms, hence the show's title. Now I'm sure if any of you have seen but a mere handful of other sports series, you'll already be seeing similarities between Ace of the Diamond and its many peers. However, whilst its setup and plot points are far from original, the way in which it handles the series' many matches creates an atmosphere unlike that of most other sports anime, with this largely being down to the nature of the sport upon which it focuses. Most sports series try and entice the viewer in with beautiful bursts of sakuga, but Ace of the Diamond doesn't really have this option, with baseball almost being more of a string of one-on-one mind games between the pitcher and the batter. This puts our protagonist in a uniquely vulnerable mental position, as he stands upon the mound with the weight of the team, the expectations of the crowd, and the ferocity of the opposition all bearing down upon him, allowing Ace of the Diamond to tackle ideas which are almost unique to this scenario, as well as going into greater depth upon the possible mental repercussions of failure in such an isolated and yet integral role for the team. Don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming that Ace of the Diamond is some sort of forensic introspection upon the mental state of a sportsman, but it did go into greater detail upon an area which I wasn't really expecting from a shonen sports series. But it's not only Sawamura's mental fortitude which is tested during these games, but the viewers as well. With baseball being a bat and ball game, there are large swathes of time where Seido are on the defensive, creating a sense of helplessness as we watch Seido weather the enemy's attacks, willing for the seconds to tick away on that video scrub bar. It was these sequences which instilled me with an almost tangible sense of vulnerability, making some of these matches almost exhausting to watch. And it was these tension-laced episodes combined with the internal battles between batter and pitcher that created an almost dangerous edge to the show's mood. Although, regardless of a unique tone, Ace of the Diamond is still unable to escape many of the trappings of the sports genre, such as the fact that it's often easy to telegraph which team is going to win any given game, or perhaps the fact that flashbacks almost constantly interrupt the action.
Nothing ever came to anyone who didn't work hard for it. Your success is down to you and you alone. And don't beg for it. Earn it. Do that, and you will be rewarded.
And some of these tropes are taken to their logical extreme.
But I have no sympathy for someone who... bleh.
Sorry about that. Where were we? Another fact which marks Ace of the Diamond apart is the pace at which many of its key events unfold. Ace of the Diamond is not a show which will give you instant gratification, with Sawamura having to endure all manner of training regimens before he's even allowed to warm the bench for the first string players. Whilst this does mean that any eventual success is all the more gratifying, it does unfortunately make for a first act which does tend to drag. In fact, many of Ace of the Diamond's strengths are similarly double-edged swords, for whilst I certainly enjoyed the unique feel of this show, I'd have to say that in all honesty I had less fun than in many of its sports show brethren, and it didn't have me yearning for the next episode as other examples of its genre have. And this sense of disappointment, or rather missed potential, is also prevalent in the show's presentation. As I mentioned in this video's introduction, Ace of the Diamond was produced by the two monoliths of the animation industry, Production ID and Studio Madhouse. And to be fair, it looks lovely, but I'd be hard pressed to think of any moments which truly impressed. And coming from such pedigree, it's hard not to feel somewhat let down. Instead of being a tour de force of gloriously fluid animation, Ace of the Diamond is in fact far more reserved, relying more upon freeze frames which, while certainly adding impact and augmenting the stop-start nature of baseball, can't help but feel weaker to the unkempt explosions of motion found in other sports series. It's also somewhat mystifying as to why a collaboration was even necessary, as for all intents and purposes, this looks like a Madhouse show. All of the character designs have that familiar Madhouse sheen, and all of the outdoor environments have that whitewash quality, whereas IG's calling cards are nowhere to be seen, apart from... oh, the CG baseball in the first opening. Yeah, that's the one. Knew you were here for a reason, IG. To summate my thoughts on the matter, all of the art in this show is very nice. It's just hard with a partnership such as this not to think back and wonder what could have been. As far as backgrounds go, there's relatively little to say, as for the most part we only really frequent rather nicely realised stadiums. Though it may be worth noting that, to a far greater degree than any other sports series which I've seen, you rarely see the characters in any setting apart from ones which relate to their sport, visually establishing that for these lads, there is only baseball. But this sense of commitment and determination would have completely fallen flat had it not been for an equally committed cast of characters. Heading up this rabble is 15-year-old Asian Sawamura, a rather excitable chap whose character traits almost entirely revolve around his love for pitching and playing baseball, with his indomitable enthusiasm often seeing the team through moments of low morale as well as helping them remain focused. Yes, Sawamura's personality is a well-tread archetype in the sports genre, and in other hands could have been rather dull on one note. However, I found him to be relentlessly charming, and often responsible for much of the series' on-point humour. Simply put, Sawamura is a fantastic protagonist for a show such as this, as you simply want the fellow to succeed. And he even took the characters into places which I wouldn't have expected from his admittedly shallow archetype. However, this shallowness would have become a far greater problem had it not been for the rather excellent foil that the rest of the cast provided, with perhaps the most important of these being Sawamura's rival and fellow pitcher, Satoru Furuya. Furuya is another well-trodden character archetype in the sports genre, that being the stoic and silent type, which certainly helped as a counterpoint to Sawamura's brash bravado, as well as establishing Furuya as this almost insurmountable presence which Sawamura must overcome in order to progress as a pitcher. And whilst all of these characteristics are excellent for a rival character, they don't really help when there are entire swathes of the show which focus around his progress and growth in matches, with these sections perhaps dragging the most. Although he does gain bonus points for essentially being Haru of the Diamond. Look, even their voice actors are the same. Supporting this central duo is a frankly enormous cast of characters, which, like so many things of Ace of the Diamond, is both a positive and a negative. Sado as a team are handled well, with a strong team dynamic, identifiable quirks, and even small character arcs for many of the more significant players, making them thoroughly enjoyable company for Ace of the Diamond's 75 episode run. However, once we start to look at the peripheral teams, the problems with such a colossal cast start to rear their heads, with perhaps the most damaging being the fact that, for the most part, a large number of these teams simply feel expendable, whilst other sports series have immensely powerful rival figures, which are foreshadowed over a number of episodes. Ace of the Diamond just seems to plonk the arbitrary opponent in front of the viewer with little to no build-up, meaning that a great deal of these matches often end up feeling like they don't ultimately mean much, aside from one notable exception come the show's finale. The one possible advantage of this is that it almost humanises the opposition. Ace of the Diamond's opponents are more often than not fully realised individuals, with their own sets of goals and motivations, not just simply being obstacles for the protagonist to overcome. And I admit that on several occasions I've been torn between which team to root for. Despite this, another factor which makes these teams feel forgettable is their designs. Aside from one or two starting members, the teams often look like copy and paste average Joes. Although this is generally a fairly universal problem within the sports genre, and it's certainly understandable with teams of this size. However, the character designs aren't the only copy and paste element of Ace of the Diamond, with Frying Pan soundtrack, often coming across as nothing more than a generic OST by numbers. Sure, it does its job, but I don't really think it can be attributed with much more than that. Aside from that, the one interesting element of the soundtrack and its corresponding openings and endings is the fact that in some of the compositions the artists have tried to mimic the sort of music you might hear in a baseball game, such as that of a marching band, and it's the little details like this which show that the production team behind Ace of the Diamond truly cared about the quality of their series. And on that note, it's about time to wrap up. Now, whilst I may have seen somewhat down on this series, I should stress that I actually really rather enjoy Ace of the Diamond, and certainly don't regret my 1,725 minutes spent with this show. It's just a shame that most of the points which I can praise the series for almost seem attached to a counterpoint. For example, whilst its unique atmosphere and style of games may alleviate its rather generic plot, it does often end up leading to some sections dragging. And whilst its visuals certainly are beautiful, it can't help but dissuade this niggling feeling that they could have been something so much more, as well as the fact that it doesn't quite provide the same level of visual stimuli as other examples of its genre have achieved. And finally, whilst the characters are endearing and enjoyable within their own right, they may in fact be too numerous for many of them to have a great degree of impact. However, despite these flaws, Ace of the Diamond is still an enjoyable sports series, with a human cast of characters, well executed humour, and with a central dynamic based more around tension than the usual frenetic frenzy. Ultimately, it often feels like Ace of the Diamond is desperately trying to live up to its potential, and to be fair, it still could, as its second season is currently airing on Crunchyroll, in a rather bizarre decision just 1 week after the first season finished. And so to conclude, whilst Ace of the Diamond may not be anything revolutionary, I'd still recommend it for sports fans who are maybe looking for something a little bit different. And even if you're new to sports series, there's still plenty of details in Ace of the Diamond which should keep you entertained. And with that being said, this brings the review to a conclusion. Thank you very much for watching. Hello again. So, as you could probably tell, this bit was shot a little bit after finishing up the review, but I thought it'd be a little bit rude to, sign off without saying thank you to everyone who's liked and commented on the last review, and particularly to the wonderful Alan, or Bakashift, for helping me out with this video and recording some rather ridiculous lines of dialogue for me. And though I'm sure most of you have already seen this stuff, if you haven't, go and check it out immediately, because it's really good. But yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for their support over the last month, and just say that it means a lot, so thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed this review.
Blah, blah, blah.